All right, welcome everyone. How's everybody doing? I'm Wes. This is Greg. We got Lori from Whitehall and Dr. Peterson, and we're joined with us today, Dr. Revering. He's been a long time Whitehall client on and off over the years. Doctor, how long have you been following kind of Whitehall?
I think since about 20 years, 20 plus years, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
so longtime Whitehall client, has built a nice office in Flower Mound, I guess in Dallas, Texas area.
Mhm.
So we're going to hear his story and hopefully find out some of the things that really made a difference in your practice, things that really changed I guess, the paradigm in your office. So
Mhm.
first, just tell us a little bit about your story and how you entered in practice uh, and how you ended up where you're at now as far as the location.
Sure, sure. Well, first of all, thanks, for having me on this mastermind thing. It's been an honor, listening to all the years you guys have had various people on, and now I think get a chance, I guess, to say, well, here's what I've learned and here's what
Yeah.
I've been up to, and not
Yeah.
to say that, gosh, all those 20 plus years, not to say that, Whitehall's fingerprints are all over my office. I mean, it's just kind of permeates my thinking, what you guys have kind of put out throughout all the years.
Sure.
Probably I heard about Whitehall back in, I'll say roughly 1998. I graduated when I was 97, 98. I was working as an associate. And one of the referring orthodontists that we would send patients to, he had a library of practice management and clinical stuff that you could check out from his little, private library. And he had some Whitehall stuff there. And so I took, and that was back in the day of audio cassettes, I'd pop it in the car and listen to it, and I'd re-listen to it and be like, wow, this stuff is like dental practice management gold. It was fantastic. So I'd say I was kind of just hooked from that point forward. So that's just kind of how I was introduced to Whitehall.
Okay.
And so every tape program you guys came up with, I mean, I've ripped them, I've put them on my computer. I mean, it's a file probably in the gigabytes as far as data, and it's been great. But
Yeah.
I
How do
started, like
you?
you said.
Yeah. So you were an associate for how
Yeah.
many years? When did you jump into owning?
Sure. So graduated in 97, worked at Monarch Dental, which is a chain office, a couple other private offices as well. And then in 1999 is when I opened. So 2 years, roughly a year and a half or so. Then opened in 99, small little space, one front desk person, no assistant, no hygienist, one computer station, two used dental chairs. I mean, just bootstrapping it. I used to climb up into the ceiling and run the network cables. I mean, just that's how it was back in the 90s. It wouldn't have to be that complex. But yeah, so just started with that, and then did my own hygiene for a few months, and then eventually kept growing. And then I forget exactly when I brought you guys on board. I think it was a couple years into it. And I think Greg, if I remember right, you kind of looked at my space, my numbers. I was up to 4 chairs, which that was my max at that point. You said, you got to go. I mean, you got to move. You got to take over the space next to you. You have to do something, but you have a physical constriction to where you are, a blockage. And the last thing I want to do was buy some land and build a building, but that was what I ended up exactly doing. So bought the land, built the building, and then January of 2005, we opened the doors, and it's a fairly large building. And my plan was I'm going to occupy 2/3 of it. I was going to rent out the other 1/3 as a shell. I had it plumbed for 10 ops, only put in maybe 6 or 7 initially, kept adding some. And then a few years later, I guess, Greg, you came out and visited again, and you said, what's with rooms 9 and 10? Said, they're plumbed, but there's no equipment. I said, well, I don't know. I know if we're ready. You said, do it. So on the phone next day, Sullivan Shine comes out, installs it, and I'm up to 10 ops. And then how it turned out, nobody ever rented that space next to me for like 7, 8 years, something like that. And by the time our numbers were going, I said, you know what, it's probably just best if I just take over that space, because I probably could make more money doing that than trying to just rent it out and be this kind of partial landlord thing. So I finished it out, and now I eventually added in all the rooms. So we now have 15 operatories. So, and that's our physical maximum space on our building.
How many square feet did you say, Doctor?
The square foot, the footprint is 6,600, I believe, but we do have a second floor where we do have our staff meetings, storage. We have a couple cubicles up there for like calls and accounting and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many doctors are working for you now?
So it's me, and I have two other associates been with me for many years, like 7 years for one, I think 11 years for the other. And we just, I mean, yesterday brought on a fourth one. So
Yeah. Okay.
we've had different ones throughout the years, and I have to say that the good ones, they stick with me for a while. I mean, like I just said, these two have been with me now for many years. The other ones have been good as well. They've been with me for 2-3 years, and then they decide to go do their own practice. And it's always an amicable split. It's fine. We're still friends with them today. But if they're not good, I mean, it's 3 months tops, and it's out, and you end up spending about a year trying to fix all the problems that they created, little things here and there. But so yeah, as I guess I learned with you guys, like when it comes to associates, I hope they hit the ground running and they can start doing things well. And might take a little time for them to produce, but
we'll get back into associates. But first, let's talk about the systems that you implemented that you felt like, or the strategies, the type of practice you built strategy-wise to kind of slowly grow it. What do you feel are the things that really made it happen for you? Like if I was a new dentist just graduating and opening up a practice, what would you tell me that helped you get where you're at?
that's kind of the baseline, was like what Greg's always said: make a space and fill it up. Just always try to do that thing. And how do you fill it up? Well, it's have the phones answer all the time. I mean, you have to have a person. You can't let it go to voicemail. There's no lunch period for people. I mean, there's stagger the front desk so that they are answering the phone, getting connected with these people and getting them in. Insurance plans, I mean, we kind of go back and forth on that. I would say be on insurance initially if you need to kind of get the volume. And if you think you've built up a big enough reputation, then you can start peeling them back, which as a side note, we did that about, let's see, with our biggest one, MetLife, which was represented 20% of our patient population about 2 years ago, actually. But now we're re-looking at it again. We're going to see if it's worth it, if we can get under some different umbrellas. But they're trying to do the insurance thing to get the volume, because if you don't get people in front of you, you don't have the opportunity. And it's like just doing regular stuff, and we're not trying to do major full mouth rehabs. It's fillings here and a crown there, an occasional veneer case, Invisalign. It's like I said, nothing big, but it's just if you be able to move. And I was snapping my fingers. I kind of say, we got to move, not rushed, but just efficient.
Tell us, we were talking before we got on about same-day service and how that's played a role in the practice, and how is that a big part of the practice? Is it a big, like what you guys, the mantra, of the day is, hey, we got to get it done today. Tell us about that and its impact.
Oh, I think that's probably the biggest part. If you want to build any kind of profit into your day, that's where it comes from, because everyone's already there. The lights are already on. You're already paying for all these people. So why not go ahead and try to wedge in some extra stuff here and there? And it's not unusual for us to put in just an extra few $1,000s. And I would think you have some clients that practically double their production, but an extra few $1,000 almost by routine on the books every day, just because you're willing to make that space and fill it up with a patient. Is all for it. Now, every once in a while, I might get a staff person that wants to push back on it, but because of the same day bonus, that kind of gets rid of that hesitancy.
And what's your bonus set up for on same day service? Do you remember?
I believe it's whoever works chairside gets 5 or 10. I mean, there's a certain threshold. I mean, it has to be like over $300-400 of service. It just can't be something small. But let's just say $10 for whoever sits chairside, and $5 to $10 whoever closes the case. Now, if the person who's doing chairside is the one who also closed it, then they get both of it. And then if collectively the entire office gets above $1,500 per doctor that's there that day. So if there's 2 doctors, which has historically been the norm, then it's $3,000. If we got $3,000 of same day, then everyone gets to pull a marble out of the bag, and it's that grab bag bonus.
So that's the kind of a fishbowl thing. So
yeah,
if you add how much in the day, 3,000 in the day, that's your kind of your number.
We say $1,500 per doctor. So
per doctor.
If it just happens to be one doctor, they just have to add $1,500. If there's, now I'm going to this new schedule. We just began it this week coming up, where I brought in another doctor, but I'm going to part-time.
Right.
So I'm still there 4 days a week, but I'm there either in the morning seeing patients or in the afternoon seeing patients, one of the two. So we're going to have to do some calculations without making it too complex to make it still work for everyone.
And is that all the bonuses you use? Do you have like a leadership bonus in place at this time?
No, not this. Well, actually, I take that back. my office manager, I told her that if she could, every pay period, so every 2 weeks when we do pay, if the collections are at a certain number, I forget, I think it's like 140,000, 150, something like that. And if the staff overall payroll is below 27%, if both of those things happen, then she gets $500. So there's an incentive for her to try to ramp up production, but let's not, overhire. Let's try to,
Right,
keep the
right.
payroll cost under control. So
And so potentially she could make $1,000 in a month is basically what you're saying.
yeah, $13,000 a year. She could theoretically.
Right. Okay. And as far as motivating the team, what have you learned? I know everybody's still trying to figure that out.
Mhm.
That's certainly a big thing in after COVID, seems like dealing with team members and keeping them motivated. What have you learned there over the years? Obviously the bonus does its trick, but anything else that you've learned?
Yeah, that's the tough one because it's, you like to think that it's all, you can augment the money with a personality or with, some intangibles that somehow make it feel like, oh, this is a family and we're all together and I like this place. But I guess I would like to think, and I've never actually heard anyone say this, but, like talk about, even though we're quick, doing quality work and making sure we stand by it and just always telling the truth, even if it's embarrassing to us. Yeah, well, your lab case, we thought it was here, but it's not, just making sure that we're saying what really happens. I think that builds to some of the credibility of our team so that they know that this is a good place to work. Because we had some that here, and then of course during COVID it got to be weird where people were temping in different offices, and we had a flood in our office in 2022, so we had some people we had to kind of let go temporarily just because we were trying to rebuild everything. And then they go away to different offices and they come back and they're like, wow, they kind of missed it. So I'd like to think we're doing something that's right, that's kind of intangible, but I can't really put my finger on it exactly.
Okay. And over the years, has this been just a slow build? Did you ever have a moment where boom, it grew real quick, or has it just been slow and steady over the years?
Slow and steady. It's been very incremental. I was thinking pre-COVID, I get a 15-chair office. Not that all 15 chairs are booked, by the way. We
Right,
try to
right.
do, 5, 6 hygiene columns and the rest are doctors. But we have several columns that are open every day. But I would say, it was inching along and we kind of flattened out at about 4.3, let's just say 4.3 million. And then
Okay.
COVID happened. And of course, that got all crazy. And then just as we were kind of coming out of COVID, then the spring of 2022, a big freeze came through Texas and wiped out my office. Went from 15 chairs down to 3. And we kind of kept leapfrogging around the office as they kind of get one room going. And then we'd go over to that side of the office when they got the other rooms going. And so that was kind of a slow rebuild. So that was 2022. I'm sorry, 2021. Sorry, but I said that wrong, 2021. Then 2022, I just kind of chalked it up as just kind of labor dysfunction. I mean, just crazy stuff going on in the labor market. You couldn't find steady people to stick around. And so if you don't have those people around, it's hard to, there's a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of bungled phone calls, a lot of things being told to patients that aren't quite right or not scheduling the way that we want. But now finally, the past 12 months, we're kind of getting back into that. Actually, we are back into the 4-point-something million range. So we've kind of made it through that valley and now we're back. But as far as that growing, yeah, it's just been slow and incremental. I was kind of hoping that we have something that'd be a big boost. I think over the years, we can try different things. We tried, sedation, oral sedation. We even have an anesthesiologist we can bring into the office, which we've done that a few times. We've tried TV ads, radio ads. We tried different things like would it be mini implants or lasers, trying to do the LANAP procedure, CAD cam. I mean, I'm willing to try darn near everything just to see,
I know you are.
short-term ortho. And some things stick, some things don't. But
nothing seems to really jump out at you as like, wow, that was really a good thing we added. Just kind of incremental, most of it.
Incremental, slow and go, yeah.
As far as the marketing goes, well, so new patients, I know you hover right around 100, sometimes below, sometimes above, but what can you tell everybody what you've experienced over there over the years? You've done TV, you've done everything pretty much with marketing. Can you just give us a rundown of what you've experienced there and where you're at now?
Yeah, I guess now I'm also thinking about it. We send out Valpak, the different mailers and those kinds of things, and it's okay. But I can tell you for the past, several years, it's been practically zero. I mean, it occupies 0.5% on our P&L. I mean, it's like practically nothing. The only thing really we're doing is probably Google pay-per-click. That's about it, really. There's
So
no, we have a
you
very nice
dropped the P.
building with
Yeah,
about 30,000 cars that go in front of it, with a monument sign out there. It's just dedicated to my building. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I like to think just being around in town for 20 something years now has something to do with it. And then of course, just being on insurance plans, we're on a few of them. We actually have a company going through and doing negotiating. We're going to see how that pans out here in a few more weeks.
yeah, okay.
But
As far as
marketing,
what you spend on marketing currently,
under $1,000 a month. I mean, well
Yeah.
under like a few hundred. I mean, it's
Right.
practically nothing.
In the past, said did TV. I mean, what were you spending back in the day when you were really aggressive with the marketing?
Right, TV, let's say roughly 5,000 a month or so. Radio is probably about the same.
And you never really saw those really, obviously you'd still do them if they were gangbusters great.
One of the things I think, I don't know how really it works, but the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is big. I mean, you have Dallas over here, Fort Worth over there, and we're up top. And if you send out that radio signal, I mean, people would have to drive a long ways to get to. I know there's people who do drive across, state lines to get to a dentist who advertises, but I don't know. I think it's an expensive game to play when you're in a big, urban area like we're in.
Right, right. So yeah, so not much marketing. So most of the stuff is internal in terms of referrals.
Yep.
And how long have you been in that mode for?
Years, probably. Pre-COVID. I mean, like I said, we really haven't.
5-6 years.
Yeah, 7, 8, probably. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I'm always embarrassed. I'm not going to call it embarrassed, but I'm always surprised at how little we spend on marketing, and it's still the phone's still ringing. As I was even asking my front desk, I said, okay, now, we're trying to look at dividing up this 15 operatory thing. I want to have a maximum, I think, of 7 operatories dedicated to just hygiene. So I think we're running about 5 or 6 hygiene columns per day now. So if we were to open up that 7th one, do you think you could get it filled? And they're all like shaking, I mean, nodding their head. Oh, for sure. I mean, no question. So,
well, let's talk about hygiene. What have you done, since we've had this, everybody's here is dealing with can't find a hygienist. I know you've dealt with this. I think you listened to one of these webinars a long time ago and got some ideas on what to do and how to fix it.
right.
What have you learned? What are you doing in hygiene with the hygiene shortage?
Sure. I actually got quite a few that have stuck with me all pre-COVID, during COVID, during the flood, all that kind of stuff. So I have several that have stuck with me, which has been very nice because that's patients like a familiar face, and it's just good to know you're working with quality people. But with the market being the way it is, I actually got away with kind of, I'm gonna call it, underpaying them by a few bucks an hour. And I realized I better bump this up. So one, getting the pay up to where it should be, at least, well, I shouldn't say should, where the market is. Maybe not where I want it to be, but where the market is. I think that helps in retention. And then what we did is just they call accelerated hygiene. My team didn't like that term. They liked the term team hygiene because accelerated implies it's a rush, whereas a team, you match them up with an assistant. So how that works, basically my office is this, and I'll give you the pay here in a second. It's, if they want to work just one column, they get 50 minutes, 50 minutes per patient. They were going to flip their own rooms, do their own charts, do their own stuff. You just run your room like a traditional hygienist, but you get 50, not 60 minutes. And for that, they get $50 an hour. Now, the other option they can do, and then some of my hygienists do this. They do it some days they do it accelerated, and some days they don't. But they can do the accelerator where they get 2 columns, and it's 60 minutes per appointment, but they're staggered every 30 minutes, and they get an assistant with that. And when they do that, they're getting $60 an hour because they're doing more. They're for creating more value. But I'm also giving them an assistant. Let's just roughly say $25 an hour. So if you say 60 plus 25, that's 85. But now they're seeing roughly 60% more patients. You kind of have to do the math on it. It comes out to about $45 to $50 an hour.
So I remember when the kicker was $5 or something like that, and you were getting a little belly aching from the hygienists, they didn't want to do it. Can you kind of go through that story a little bit?
Sure. Well, yeah. Well, we always, for many, many years, it was the traditional 60-minute appointment. So one every hour on the hour kind of thing. And they got to work their column. And you guys came in and said, you could shorten it because we got lots of other hygienists who are doing it well, and patients are happy and that whole thing. And so we shortened it. I think we tried to go to 40 and they just completely couldn't handle it. So it's all right, 50. And even at 50, they were moaning about how bad it was. And so I said, okay, well, here's the deal. I'm gonna give you guys the option. You can keep your traditional 60-minute appointments and you're gonna make, at that point, I think they were making $43 an hour or so. Or you can go to the 50-minute and I give you $3 an hour more. You pick. So you can keep your pay the same, keep your hours, your schedule the same, or you can be a little bit more, efficient. It's worth it to me. And for that, I give you $3 an hour more. And a majority of them said, you know what? I think 50 works just fine. I think we can make that work. So all of their concerns about patient care and quality, and that seemed to somehow take a secondary position to their increased pay. That's at least how I interpreted it.
Yeah. Okay. And so now it's running great, obviously. No problems in getting people and filling or getting columns, I guess, on the schedule.
We got one coming in. Who's going to do the double column thing. And I mean, if she comes on board and if she works out, we're going to be set. We'll be pretty much at 7 columns a day. Yeah, which is enough to feed the doctors, basically.
Right. Okay. And getting into the doctors, you said when did you first dabble into the associate arena? How many years ago?
Oh God, like probably 2006, we'll say. I mean, we're talking long time ago.
Okay. And what was your experience in the beginning? Did it go well right out of the chute, or did you have some mistakes, things that you learned?
Generally, I mean, pretty decent. Like I said, though, if you you try to do your best to interview, and it is amazing to me, some of the people that come in for the interview that just personality wise, it's just not going to be a fit. But then clinically wise, bring them in for a working interview. It's tough. I mean, I'd love to just give them a typodont and say, here, prep a crown. And maybe I'm going to start doing that in the future. But, you let them loose with a patient and it is scary what they're being taught, even if they've been out for a couple of years. I just recently had one where she did a crown prep, and instead of doing an impression, we do that tarot scan. So it's easy to go look at her prep. And I don't even know what the design principle she was following. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. And
what percent would you say fall in that zone where the dentistry,
60% don't know what's going on?
Yeah. Okay.
It's more than half.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you're mainly bringing on younger dentists over the years, people that are less experienced, would you say?
It's funny, the two that I have with me right now, like I'm 52, they're in their 50s as well. And so they tried to do the practicing on their own, or they moved in from somewhere else, and they just like, I just want to be an employee. That's it. They don't want any plans of ownership. So they, like you guys have kind of said, the recipe for a great one, is that. So they've been fine. I wish they could produce more. I mean, they can see the data versus the number of patients they see, the number, the amount of hours they work, and you combine that to the production that they do. And it's just, even though they got the experience, I can trust them clinically. It's just the production efficiency isn't quite there.
When you bring on a new associate and you're trying them out and you're deciding on the quality, how long do you take, to make kind of a judgment call on the dentist?
Within a couple of months, 2 to 3 months. I mean, you can understand a couple of yellow flags that may pop up in the first week or two, just like little differences of opinion or whatever. But and it's so funny. Over the years, for every mistake or whatever that they've made, or I've made myself or other associates, I take pictures of it. I document it to show, okay, this is not what you do. Instead, we do it this way. Now, over the years, I just created a PDF, and I decided, why don't I just go ahead and release this out to the world? So I made an Amazon. I put a book together and put it on Amazon, and I'm happy to report that I have a whopping 15 units sold now at this point. Wes and I was joking because I think the only people that bought it were my existing or my new associates. There was like 2 different people who bought it. I'm like, I gotta sell a few more than these.
Yeah, that's right. So they what are they producing per month? I think that's what's their contribution? And they're not full time, they're working 3 days a week each, something like that.
Each of them work 3 days a week, and they're producing in the 40 to 50,000 range, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
Whereas I work 4 days a week and I'm over 100,000, 115. So
Right. So
not a heavy hitter compared to some of your other clients, but consistently, I think it does just fine.
Yeah.
If you
So
look
when-
at what the reports that come back with a typical dentist makes is like 200, 230,000, not owners, just, a dentist, or if you're you're paying yourself like an associate, which is what I do with my practice. I give myself two paychecks. The first is me working as an associate. I pay myself just like the doctors do, same percentage, all that kind of stuff.
what is
But I
that
also pay
percentage?
myself as an owner.
What is that percentage? Is that 25, 27, 28? Where
They
you at?
start at 27 and then they work up to about 30. Yeah, they're
Okay.
at 30. That's kind of the max point.
Okay.
And I cover all their expenses except for their malpractice, but I cover the lab bill, which, by the way, one of your guys, a couple of calls a couple months ago, had a really good idea. I liked it. The math works out just almost the exact same way. Is that he takes their adjusted production, subtracts that associate's lab bill, then pays them 35% of whatever's left over. And that's the same thing as doing 30% and the owner paying the lab bill. I kind of
Right.
like that approach better because now the associate has the ability to go tell all of his other buddies that, hey, I'm making 35%, because they're kind of hearing somewhere in the low 30s and something like that. But I
Right.
think people
Right.
leave out the fact that lab bill is being covered, but
How, as far as looking at the dentistry that they're doing, the first couple months, I mean, how much are you really studying what they're doing? Is it every case?
mm,
The spot checking, I guess. How often would you recommend?
I'd say the assistants are my spies. I mean, they're the ones that sit chairside with me. They can tell, they've been around for a while. They know what works and what doesn't. They understand there's little quirky differences. Even the ones that have been with me for years, they know that, whatever. I like to use a blue needle. The other doctor likes to use a yellow needle, whatever. But when it comes to the actual quality of the work, I think they can tell, and they can tell if they're getting along well with the patients. And so, but then, I mean, like I said, I have the iTero, so I can always check their preps. I don't try to let them do impressions. I want them to do the scan so that I can pull it up and see later. But I'm not really taking bite wings of their interproximal fillings to see if they have the contour right. And, post-ops will kind of tell you if patients are always showing back up with bite adjustments left and right, that's kind of
The
shows that
sign.
there's a little bit something off. But yeah.
Okay. And then as far as ramping them up, what have you learned about what you need to do? What type of patient flow they might need to be able to produce? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I've kind of started looking at my existing ones, and I've kind of looked at different data points to see how we can make this so it's kind of, I won't call it fair, but give people a fair shot at producing.
Mhm.
I kind of look at, first of all, they have to have enough opportunity. And opportunity means, do they get in front of enough new patients and in front of enough periodic exams? If your associates aren't getting enough opportunity in those regards, it's going to be hard to expect them to produce anything. So we're trying to make that more equal. And I kind of learned that pre-COVID, we brought in this one doc and he was doing a bunch of checkups. Well, he was kind of stealing away from some of the other docs. And, you start to hear the complaints about that. And so we're monitoring that to make sure that people have equal, I call it equal opportunity, try to make things more fair, given the amount of time they're actually in the office.
Any numbers like per day that you look like, would you say, okay, they got to have eight hygiene checks a day and at least 2 new patients? Any number jumps out at you
Yeah.
on a
Well,
daily
roughly, I mean,
basis?
yeah, if we have like 100 new patients, you're open 20 days a month, that's 5 new patients a day, roughly, and you have 2 docs. So, it's roughly 2 new patients a day,
Yeah.
and roughly, we'll say about 15 hygiene checks. It might be 13, it might be 18, but somewhere in the teens when it comes to that. At least that's what I'm doing. If that's what I'm seeing and I'm producing numbers I produce, then I would hope that they could do the same thing, given the same opportunity. But
Right.
so I look at the opportunity first. Are they getting enough, swings at the ball? But then second is, are they able to convert? Which means, okay, you saw that many patients. Now, how much did you actually produce? And over time, you can't just look at 1 month, but over time, you should be able to tell consistently how well does this person do? Because if you could just keep feeding them patient after patient, but they can't convert it into production, it's frustrating, because they're kind of running inefficient. And then the other one is efficiency. Okay, how much time did you actually work seeing or doing work? Because if you, again, came down to cranking out the amount of work that you did in a given set amount of time, it should be, if you look at the doctors across the board, it should be some difference, or it should be some similarities, not such wild differences.
And what seems to be the headache, in terms of dealing with associates, like over the years, all the associates you've had, what what part of it, I don't want to say keeps you up at night, but yeah, it gives you, stresses you out.
Right. Well, it's a part I can't quite figure out because these doctors are getting paid strictly commission. So you think that they would be really hungry, wanting to, produce, because the more they produce, the more they make. And the two I have right now, they don't need to produce. They're not the head breadwinner at their, or they're the equal breadwinner at their house, and things are fine. I have one that doesn't even, they don't have any children. His wife works, so he's not really motivated. They just pay for their travel budget. And the other one, her husband's the main breadwinner and she's not. I mean, she brings home a decent chunk, but they don't have that drive. I'm always trying to see, how can I determine if someone's ethically hungry? And that's what I'm trying to get to. And I've had one guy who's like crazy hungry. He's great when he was in the office because he was producing like mad, but it was all terrible work and I had to go back and redo it all.
Yeah. Okay. So finding, that's the headache for you, I
Yeah.
guess is what you would say, is finding that balance, finding that perfect person that's hungry,
Mhm.
but still ethical and still going to produce good quality dentistry.
Yeah.
But has been the challenge.
hmm Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And even when you show them the numbers and you compare, look, all three of us doctors, here are the days we worked, here are the patients that we've seen, here's your production numbers. And they look at it and they can kind of see, all right, they're kind of the low producer. And it seems like they just kind of shrug their shoulders and don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the main frustration then right
Mhm.
now in practice.
Yeah.
So tell us the strategy going forward and what you would like to see happen in your practice, where you're, the next year or two, what your plans are.
Well, this new guy coming in, who just started, like I said, literally yesterday. He, I think he's very motivated to get moving on this thing. He says, I want to make money, and he wants to, and I think he, does good work. He got like very high marks in endo and pros in his, training in school. And I've seen some of his work already. He's like has a portfolio already put together. So this guy seems to care about
Right.
his clinical work, but he also wants to get compensated for it. So
I take it
my
he's
hope
young.
is,
So he's
what's
out of
that?
school. I take it he's young then. He's out of school, just graduated. So he hasn't been a dentist for how
A
long?
couple of years. He's been working at the corporate places for a couple of years.
Okay.
But my hope is that he kind of comes along and rattles the cage a little bit, that the other docs can see, well, it's not just the owner, because when confronted before, we're like, why do you guys think that I can produce but they can't? And the only thing that they've come up with was, well, you're the owner. Well, the name of the practice is Cross Timbers Dental. It's not Brad Revering and Associates, and they get the scraps. It should be an equal field for everybody. And I don't know, they just don't seem to get it, or they don't want to attack it.
So we're going to bring on this associate. You said you're going to grow hygiene, and that's kind of the plan, is to rattle and get these other doctors feeling like, motivate them with competition, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. I don't know. Is that a strategy? They say hope isn't a strategy, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll
Okay.
see.
And grow hygiene is obviously the other strategy in the practice. So getting back up to 7. Were you at 7 before? 7 columns?
A couple days a week. I'm sorry, a couple days a month. It would just by chance somebody would, had an extra day they could work, so it wasn't the norm, but we've been able to do it. So we know our office has been stress tested to make sure it can handle it. So it can.
Okay. And then moving on to kind of leadership in the practice, what have you learned over the years? I know you brought on leaders and replaced them and had to deal a lot with that. Tell us a little bit about your experience with having new office managers and how you've recruited them, and have you found it really difficult to find good people?
Yeah, difficult to find the right person. I have to say that this whole thing with me now backing off and going part-time, those non-clinical times, I'm still going to be in the office because I've never really learned how the front desk works. I don't know how to read an insurance form or how to file a claim or anything like that. I want to learn a little bit more about that, not so much to micromanage, but just to kind of see what's all really involved. I used to run payroll. Well, I want to sit in and see, how do you guys do payroll? Because I hear it takes 2 days, 3 days to do payroll. Why does it take that long? Sending out statements. I've just realized, well, no one's been sending out statements for months. And So I was like, I'm trying to get to these systems and get them in place so that when whatever future managers that we have in place, it's like, I know how it all supposed to work. I got the clinical part down. Now it's the other part of the office that I kind of need to know about.
Have you ever had that figured out in terms of having a good leader, or has that also been a little bit of a struggle in the office and being able to, not to say that these people are bad, but to have systems in place that, has that always been a struggle here?
It's had its struggles, I mean, different things, whether the person might be really good with people, but they don't know math, they can't figure up anything, or they know systems, but my gosh, they're just so abrasive with the staff that the staff quit because of that person. So yeah, we're just trying to find that great mix of both, the hard numbers, and also the human components. So you can put the two together and have them both match. And that's, it's like trying to find the perfect spouse, I mean, you're gonna find the perfect,
Yeah,
there's never gonna be the perfect, but can you find somebody that, that it works, yeah, that's a tough one over the years of trying to find somebody who's great. Now I've had them, they stuck around for, years, but I don't know if I could ever trying to like even distill that right now, because my current office manager, I'm trying to decide if she's really fit for the role. And I think my responsibility is to kind of lay out really what are my expectations for her. And then do some training. I mean, it's one of those things that maybe throw them in there and say, well, I hope you're reading my mind and do everything right. But I think I need to do some training and set some expectations so we can both know if she's, cutting it or not.
And over the years, have you always hired from outside, in this position? Have you always brought people from the outside, or did you bring them up through the actual practice itself?
Most of the time from the outside. I've had one or two I think I've brought from the inside up. So yeah.
Any insight, because sometimes some of these people are going to be looking for a leader and looking for somebody from the outside. Were you finding somebody that was in dentistry, or somebody that was out of dentistry and teaching them the dental component? What's been your experience there?
I've tried it both ways with that. I had one who actually worked with, I think, one of your former clients. I won't say who, but he's here in the area, kind of a big area, big practice, and brought this person thinking, well, gosh, if she could run his practice, then she's got to be great. Well, she wasn't. She knew how to do OSHA compliance really good, but she had no idea about how to do production. And so it's like, we're trying to grow the practice here. I mean, we'll take care of the compliance stuff, but let's, then I brought another guy who he actually ran a chain of veterinarian offices. So that, okay, well, it's kind of like healthcare in a sense, but let's maybe bring someone from the outside who might have an outside perspective. And, he just didn't work out. If you remember right, we had to let him go off of borderline sexual harassment possibilities. Like, go. You got to leave. You got to leave now.
Dr. Brad, I have a question for you. You're looking to kind of semi-retire, kind of slow down. The danger looks like from here that the temptation would be for you to just slowly take on more management, more personal, hands-on, kind of where you came from. You kind of rose out of that, and I would hate to see that happen. I hope hope that's not your plan.
Oh, no, I can definitely see that as a thing, being sucked into that part of it. I guess it's just, I want to learn more about how it runs, because if I were to look kind of at my plan, kind of interesting. I was doing a search for something and I stumbled across a Harvard Business Review article from 1983. That's kind of how dorky it is, but it was actually, it was written about small business owners in the 5 stages of growth. And they did talk about how you first start, it's just, it's chaotic, and then you finally get some systems in place. And then there do reach a point where you have to kind of make a decision. And I kind of noticed this on some of your recent calls with the Mastermind. And that is, either you kind of reach that point where you're like, okay, I got, in this case, one location, it's big, it's fine, it's stable. I want to, and they call the word disengage, still stick around, still here, but just pursuing other things. I think of like Roy Smith or Mark Looney, both
Right.
Texas guys as well. They're fine. They're happy with where they are. They've kind of grown into practice where they are. They don't need to grow into multiple locations, but they kind of decided to disengage to a certain level. And then you have the other guys like Scott Sayre or Kim Keller just recently were talking about, how they have multiple locations. So they've decided once they kind of got that one thing down, they disengaged in the sense that they weren't doing clinical dentistry. I think Kim Keller, I think he doesn't even do dentistry anymore. He just kind of took that new leap, and it's a whole new skill set and what he has to do. So I guess what I'm trying to do is one, try to get a good handle on the current location, but then if my plan should be in the future to grow or do something like in multiple locations, then I want to at least be ready to handle that part of it. Because I got to know how both ends of the practice work, front and back. So I think I'm setting myself up for making a choice of what I want to do. And I kind of see myself as that kind of, I got to get clarity on which way I want to go. Because you're right, I could decide to back out, but I don't know if I'm going to do that.
Question. Is there in your practice a focus on production per patient, meaning you see 40 patients or whatever, and that
Right.
produces, and because you do bread and butter, you do basic things, we could expect them to have the same per capita based on new patients. Is there any focus on that, or should we be looking at that to tell them, hey, you're underproducing, and yeah, I know your spouse works and all of that, but this job is what it is.
Mhm.
You've certainly proven what can be done.
Right. Yeah, because it should be roughly, and you guys have always said it for years, like $2,500 per new patient, and I'm sure with inflation, that's probably gone up somewhat, but yeah, that's what I was talking about, that whole opportunity and conversion and efficiency. There's it's a very simple spreadsheet to put together, and you can compare us three to see how we're doing compared to one another. And yeah, that's the frustrating part, but it comes back to, working with the devil versus the one you don't know. It's like, okay,
Right.
they're good, they're dependable, they show up, their clinical work is fine, they just don't produce that well. Or do you say, I'm going to roll the dice and try somebody else, and you don't know what you're going to get.
This new fellow sounds like exactly what you need, because all the stories of the big producing practices where the owner backs off some, there's typically a lead dog, somebody that really pushes the production. I think it's a great thing you're looking at right now.
Yeah, I mean, it has the potential.
Yeah.
I will tell, but yeah, if it doesn't work out with this guy, then we'll keep looking.
I guess that's what you're nervous about, is let somebody go and then you got to go through 2 or 3 people. So and that's never fun.
Right.
Can I ask you a question? What stands out to you, Dr. Peterson? Because some of the ones Dr. Grevering mentioned were your clients. What stands out to you? Is it what they're doing different, or what he might even consider?
Well, I think he's on the right track, and it's decision time. Dr. Looney is a little bit older and was actually, when we started 10 years ago, considering selling his practice outright. So this has been a huge step for him to build it up to the level it is now. He has a couple of partners, which is a little bit of a different model than you've heard too. So I think there's actually a very good chance they will do a duplicate or another office in another location, but Mark will not be as involved directly as he is at their main location. Kim Keller has always been ambitious and willing to try lots of things. And you probably noticed he said he also got a master of business master's degree, MBA, from one of the local colleges in his spare time, which I don't know how he has any of that anyway. But he also has partners with his brothers, which one is a dentist, one's an attorney, one is with Pixar Studios. I mean, it's a smart family, and they're all ambitious. So they're really turning this into, in many ways, a whole different DSO type model. That's why I thought it was interesting to hear what he said a week or so ago. But I see people that are happy both ways, and some of it is really just how old are you, and how hard do you want to work, and how much time do you want to take off. I just helped an office in California do a transition, single doctor to a 2-year associate, who bought it, single practice, and he's just building it up. But the owner doctor now first started not working on Fridays. And he said, well, I don't know, I'm so nervous, I'm not working, I should be there. And I said, well, you'll get used to it. Well, now he's down to working 3 days a week. And he said, maybe I'm going to go to 2.5. So it's really what your life choices are. If I wasn't busy, I'd go crazy. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I think Greg and Wes will tell you the same thing. You don't want to shut your brain down. And having ambitions, building things gives me a sense of accomplishment, and I think gives most of us a sense of accomplishment. So I think what you said was profound. You're doing something that you don't hear most people say. You're actually analyzing it from that Harvard business study, and you're looking at, what do I want to do? Sometimes it just kind of happens, but I admire what you're doing in really analyzing it and making some strong personality driven decisions, not just dollar driven and not just lifestyle also.
Mm-hmm.
Reverend proceeds with such caution. I often think of somebody walking barefoot through a minefield. He's very careful. He doesn't have to hit the reset button. The only time that happens is COVID or a flood or something. Very cautious. He learns from all of you in a way that we just think's amazing. But Doctor, let me challenge something that you're doing. With the number of associates you're considering, with your future kind of moving toward backing away a bit, what have you thought about maybe stepping on the marketing pedal, and really pushing the practice a little bit?
Right.
I don't mean crazy, but
Definitely, it's on my to-do list of all the things to do when I'm not seeing patients,
Okay.
and maybe kind of a more of an indirect route. For example, I created a YouTube channel years ago that was meant just really to train staff. I just put out stuff like how we do things in the office and just a central location for them to go see it. Well, as it turns out, lots of other people were going out to see it. And so I put over 100 videos on YouTube and have all these subscribers, and that's great. It'd be nice to monetize that somehow. But the point is that we're used to making videos and putting stuff out there. And, of course, with social media, Instagram or Threads now, whatever it might be, to put something out there to kind of create the portfolio or the mood or whatever it is about our practice to kind of help draw people on the web to maybe come to our practice. So maybe the traditional ways of, sending out the mailers, that gets replaced by doing something that's more like a creative video thing that gets put out there. Because I'm thinking, even though we have a nice physical location within our town, that could easily be usurped by somebody who has a very strong web presence. And you could be in some little hidden spot in some office professional complex, could be a guy who has really good web, whatever you call it, marketing. Right. So I'm completely open to
you think
like
of the
push the pedal on that one.
You probably have somewhat timid associates, and I think you cut back on your insurance participation a bit. In other words, those are normally death sentences for people that go wholeheartedly in that direction. So you're making it work, that's great. You're kind of doing it the old-fashioned way.
You remember Dr. Seidner last time, so last month. So he called us up, he's been a client on and off for years, and he called us up about a specific practice that he had trouble with. It actually reached a point where it was underwater. He was losing, I don't know, 20,000 a month or something like that. Called us on it to fix it and isolate what the problem was. He had one underproducing doctor causing all the problems, sucking up a little bit too much patient flow, and squeezing out really what the other doctors could do, because to get her production halfway decent, she's absorbing maybe 20% more patient flow than she should have. So we went in and we kind of, he was ready to just fire her. And I just said, hey, look, you got to listen to me. You got to step up or this is going to happen. And it, boom, changed overnight. She listened. Next month, they grew by 40%, just like that. You get a doctor that's underproducing, sucking up the patient flow from everybody else that is producers. It's devastating to the bottom line, to the prospects of growth. It's all over. It's all off the table. When you get somebody that's, I'd say, wallowing at 3,000 a day type of production, it's over in associate practice. They really got to get near 5 to where the lights come back on and you feel like, hey, let's grow, let's add another practice, and it all gets exciting and fun again. So I know that you're bringing on this other doctor to kind of have that in your, but my experience is has been these underproducing doctors, for these people that are almost doing well, kind of makes, I don't say practice not worth living, but yeah,
Interesting.
it
It's a lot of
becomes,
activity for not a lot of reward.
right,
And that's
exactly.
the thing I always think of, like, burnout doesn't come from just working hard. It's like not being rewarded for working hard, you know. But I think also
Yeah.
part of the reason why, right now I'm kind of wondering how things are going. I looked at the statistics, and leaving the doctors for a moment, it's the collecting part. Our collections have really dipped like into the low 90s as far as, adjusted production and collection. Usually they're supposed to be pretty close, and it was good while we hired an outside company to kind of make up for a lot of old insurance claims. Well, those have all come in. Now we're back to normal, and normal isn't collecting. And so that's the part that I got to go try to figure out. And I don't think the current leadership truly appreciates how important it is to get that money in across the counter and, wherever it might be. We're actually switching next week from Dentrix to a new system called CareStack, which is all web-based, and it's supposed to make it easier for patients to pay. They can pay by, text to pay, and they have all these different automated ways of trying to get the patients to, and insurance for that matter, to get them to pay up front or get them to pay in a timely manner. So I hope is some automation is going to help circumvent some of this human error that we're having.
Yeah, hard to pay your associates on money that you didn't collect,
Right.
And you have to do it, and that's not fun. That also is not fun.
Dr. Ruttering, do you mind if we open this up to questions?
Sure. Great.
Dr. Maddie, what comes to mind as you hear this going by?
Laura, you gotta unmute.
You're unmute. There you go.
I wrote down some questions. Let's see. How long does it take you to assess an associate's performance? We kind of touched on it. I think you said like 2 or 3 months. If you could just go through that again. And also when it comes to front office staff, assistants, like how long before you want to see progress? Is it 3 months, 6 months, a year? Or, can you just go through each position and kind of describe what you expect?
Sure. Well, when it comes to the associates, it's like my experience is 2 or 3 months. That's about as long as it takes just to judge the quality of their work. If it's up to the same standard that you have or something you find acceptable, that's about as much time as it's going to take. And I guess if they're doing crummy work, I don't have the patience for them to try to figure it out while we're having to do a bunch of warranty work. So just a few months when it comes to the associates. Assistants, we have also a dental assisting school that we run after hours in my facility. And the nice thing about that is that we get a constant feed. We have that course runs 3 times a year. So we're always getting a constant feed of people. And they work, they start off in being a sterile tech. And so they get to kind of just learn the materials and so forth before we, introduce them into the operatories. So that one, thankfully, there's a little bit more wiggle room as far as, 5, 6, 7 months of having somebody acclimate. Front desk, it's always like, again, I spend all my time, 98% of my time in the back. So I don't really know what goes up at the front. I just have to trust that the leaders up there, the office manager, the front office team lead, that they have a pretty good assessment of how somebody is doing. The only thing really maybe done to check in on them is listen in on some phone calls that they've had and just, see how that's going. But
Go ahead.
When you hired your first associate, did you lose money in the beginning? Like how long did it take before you were able to see a return on your investment or, strategy there?
Right. Thinking back, gosh, I can't remember the first associate, but
Mhm.
you know, the first couple ones, you're just feeding them these patients, and it's going to take a while for that wheel to, get some traction. So I don't know. I guess I never really measured the dollars on it, which sounds bad, but it's a few months, because like I said, it takes a while to ramp up. But like you said, Wes, that's not always true. You can get someone that can put them right in there and they start running day one producing, if they know how to sell and how to work and be efficient and all that kind of stuff. So
And,
We were
and when you did
talking- yeah.
your build out, how long did it take you before you paid the banks back, or did you even have to take a loan for adding your additional operatories? Like, is there a certain year that, or like 5 years you want to pay it off, 10 years, less than that, 2 years?
when I first opened in that small space, it was a 5-year note, and it's so funny. I think or 5 or 7 years, I forget exactly. But just as I was about ready to pay that one off, that's when Greg says you should go move. Which then, to go buy some land and build a building and finish it out and get some additional equipment, I think that was 1.8 million. And that was back in the early 2000s. So that was, that was a lot of money back then, as it is, now, even more back then. But then as we kept adding in occasionally we'd refinance the loans, and I mean the thing's going to all be paid off. I mean the practice itself has zero debt. The building, separate entity, that's what I still have some debt on, and that's going to be paid off here in the next couple of years.
Mhm.
So, I don't know. It's like, what do you look at? Like interest rates. Like for example, when interest rates were low just a couple of years ago, refinanced this house and my building, got it way down and kind of extended the loan amount a little bit as far as the term, but the rate is so low.
So on
Greg
on
says,
equipment and things like that, it was like 5 years, and the building was a bit longer.
the building itself is like 20 years. Think of it like a mortgage on a house. I think we went 20 years on the actual building. All the practice stuff, I usually try to, if I buy like a piece of equipment or, finish out, might be a few $100,000 for whatever, 5 years, typically, something like that. I mean, kind of run the numbers. Like if I can't pay this thing off at whatever the 5-year amortization rate is, I should maybe be looking at whether or not I should be throwing that much money out there, even if it's a loan.
Dr. Kuratome, do you have a question?
Somebody asked, how do you find your associates? So the last one you just hired, what was your source? Just word of mouth, or did you actually put an ad out somewhere?
Mostly through ads. You have the dentalpost.net is a big one. Of course, now clouddentistry.com. That's a good place to get temps, by the way. It's kind of like Uber for dentistry. It's been great for getting even hygienists in. But we get pretty much those two are the biggest sources we're getting, just kind of on the outside. I mean, we put the word out to specialists in our area in case they may know of somebody, but most of them have just come through. Actually, I'm sorry, the one that's been with me for the longest, I met her through a friend at a New Year's Eve party, 12 years ago. So, but most of them, it's going to be marketing for them through ads.
Dr. Reed, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't really have a question. I've been following you for many years, and we've just kind of struggled along the whole way. And I think a good part of it is because I decided to open a practice in a community that has a zero growth policy. They don't want people moving in. They don't want extra businesses. They don't want the roads widened. It's Santa Cruz County in California. So.
Now this area is booming. I mean, if you look at Flower Mound, Texas, it has reached like one of the top places to live for many years. It also was ranked as like one of the most prosperous areas. I mean, it beats out like Beverly Hills, but it's not, I don't think it's crazy rich. There's some other communities around here that the home price and the median income level is much higher than here, but it's still an affluent area. And gosh, yeah, if it wasn't for growth, I don't know how the practice would do, because we just have people piling in. They're all moving from out of state to Texas. So that's the benefit that I have.
Right.
It's tough in areas that are
Very tough.
stagnant like that there is nobody moving in, nobody moving out.
A mobile home here costs like $500,000.
Jeez.
That is tough. Yeah, that's a tough situation.
There you go.
Yeah.
Dr. Ken Weddle, do you have anything to add for us? I'm going to take that as a no. Okay, Dr. Storer, Mark.
let me unmute. I think that, Greg, this is a great program, and I think Dr. Raveling should be commended for what he's doing. What I'm finding is I am a little bit different because I'm on the northwest side of Chicago in an urban area that's very saturated with dentists. And what I find works the best in my practice, and what I picked up from Dr. Raveling, was internal marketing. Internal marketing is very, very important. I am in the professional building attached to a hospital that has about 500 beds, and I'm the only dentist in the professional building. And I find that there's a lot of things I do for the hospital that I really don't get fees for, because unfortunately, a lot of the patients that come in that I see in the emergency room are on public aid. But just getting out there and doing things that you don't often see a dollar return for makes a big difference in your marketing. And I think that's where the real dollar value of marketing is internal marketing. And I also wanted to empathize with him about associates. It's hard to get associates to motivate and work as hard as you do. And the problem that I have is my patients want to see me. And they're used to seeing me. And if they have to see another doctor, they're kind of reluctant. And I have two associates. One is in her 50s, and the other one was my teacher in dental school who moved his practice in with me. And so he doesn't have any investment in the practice, but he did bring his patients. But I'm having a hard time getting him motivated, because when I do his hygiene exams, I find a ton of work. And then when they go to see him, he says, "Oh, you don't really need that."
Oh,
which is, you know, and him being my ex-instructor, you know, and I really like that one term that you used, which was ethically producing, ethically staying busy. There's plenty of dentistry to do that you can do ethically, but my problem is getting my associates to look at things the same way I do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem that every owner doctor has, when people don't have how would you say it, an interest in ownership. So that's why I think it's really rewarding. I like to hear people that are doing things the same way I do things and are getting about the same return. A real big problem in Chicago is finding hygienists. And, you know, I've offered my hygienists the same thing with the double scheduling and having an assistant. And I'm still having a problem finding people that are motivated to work that type of schedule.
Mhm.
So, and I think that could be the,
Do you pay them extra?
Pardon me?
Are you paying them extra on that day, those days?
Yeah, but they don't want to. It's like this millennial thing. You know,
Yeah.
I see it in my own kids. You know, they're just not as hungry as I am. And they seem to be different now. They're content to make X amount of dollars a day without having to stress themselves. And, you know, like I said, and another good point is you just have to find somebody that's going to be the lead dog and threaten the existence of the other associates, or threaten the existence of the other hygienists, if they're really willing to perform. So I just find it incredibly enlightening.
Can I make a point here on this? People that we look for, you know, we try to identify, they either have to be intrinsically motivated, or they got to be motivated by money. Everybody else has got to be out, you know. So you need to identify in your practices, do I got people I can motivate with money, or do I have people that are motivated just intrinsically? Everybody else can't fit in, especially in these critical roles, you know. So in hygienists, if you can't give them $10 or $15 to run a multiple schedule, and you got 3 hygienists, 1 or 2 should step up and want extra money. So that's obviously not good, in the sense that you can't even motivate them for same day service. So having hygienists that you can't motivate with money is not a good situation, just for the practice health.
Even with my
Especially
current one.
Even if when you're trying to support an associate, you need the team's motivation and drive to help offset the associate's kind of weakness with their own motivation. So you need a good hygienist or a good assistant that is motivated by money from same day service, that bonus that Dr. Reverend talked about. Well, somebody's got to be motivated for money. I mean, in the practice.
I understand that. I understand that completely. And, you know, one of the things that we're dealing with in Chicago is because it's so saturated, there aren't a lot of hygienists that are getting turned out all the time.
Yeah,
And some
yeah.
of these are getting $60, $75 an hour. And the ones that work at temps are getting even more than that. And they're content to let the money roll in. So it's just finding an individual, the
Yeah.
right individual. But, you know, I'm kind of stuck with what I have. You know, I mean, you know, you want them to perform more, but it's better than having nothing at all.
Oh, yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, but I think the idea is having an open mind and realizing what they can do and trying to get them to that spot.
Wes?
Dr. Reverend, can we talk about how you get patients to see your associates versus you, especially in the beginning? You know, that's a question that's come up a few times here. How did you get patients to move? What was the?
I don't know. I think it was just surprising that many of them, they're fine with whoever. Maybe I haven't built as strong of a bond with them as I would hope that I had, but it's, you know, I think it's with the hygienists. They say, do you have a preference of which doctor you want to see today? And a lot of them go, yeah, I don't care. And they just see whoever. I would like to listen in. I mean, are they kind of coaching them to say, you know, I don't care? Or are they saying, you know, you usually see Dr. Revering and he's here today. Do you want to see him? I mean, of course they're going to feel like the answer should be, yes, I want to see him. But if they just leave that preamble out and just say, doesn't matter who you see today, and that's it, and just leave it up to them. A lot of times they're like, yeah, I don't know. What's his name? You know, they can't remember our names half the time anyway.
Did you have a problem with this in the beginning? You know, when you first had an associate, did you remember this big problem?
I don't remember it being a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But even like you said, with the last guy I was talking about in the Chicago area, even with my existing hygienists, the ones who've been with me for years, pre-COVID, all the way through the flood and all that stuff, even they got it laid out right in front of you. What do you want? You want $50 an hour or $60 an hour? You know, which with those different scenarios. And
there's a certain dollar amount that they'll do it.
Young, old, they're all saying, I like the 50. I'll do a day or two of the 60, but that's it. I don't want to do any more of that. Okay, I just hired one. That's all she wants to run, 2 columns. That's all she wants to do. She doesn't want to do 1 column. And I got another one on board, hopefully soon, that's going to want to just run 2 columns. So yeah, it's a matter of taste. Their life, whatever, work-life balance.
I think Dr. Bernstein, can we I think he's got a question. He's got his hand up, I guess.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
A couple comments I'd like to make. One is when it comes to associates changing my diagnosis. Tell the new associates, I will never ask you to do anything that you feel is unethical. But if you're going to change my diagnosis, you have to come to me first, so that when you go back to that patient, we have a reason why we're changing the diagnosis. Otherwise, if you just change that diagnosis, I'm going to come across as being unethical. So you have to come to me in my office. Let's discuss what is going to be our excuse that all of a sudden you don't need this treatment. Second thing, with unmotivated people who have another spouse working. Yes, I've had that. When you hire say a woman whose husband makes a lot of money, that associate is not going to be that motivated to be producing. Third thing, hygiene costs way out of control. With the COVID, I had 2. COVID was pretty good for me, but about 3 or 4 months ago, I had 2 hygienists who gave me notice within a week of each other. And all of a sudden I was down half my hygiene capacity. So I had to raise the cost of the salary to those hygienists. I'm in Santa Monica, California. I'm paying them a guaranteed $70 an hour. It is accelerated hygiene. Brad, you use the term
team hygiene. Team hygiene. Team hygiene.
Team hygiene. I like that. That's really good. Okay.
Forward.
I agree with Brad. My staff are my eyes. When I have a new associate, I ask them, I can't stand over these guys and watch what they're doing. So I have to count on this staff, okay, who are all bonused. So they are equally motivated to make sure that this new associate is doing well. When it comes time to the handing off the patients to the associate, I just am very casual about it. I'll say to them, I'll do the diagnosis and I'll say something to the effect of, Next time you'll be seeing Dr. Smith. Okay, it's not my role to be doing composites in the office. That's Dr. Smith's role. Okay, and I purposely use the word composites. I know they don't know what that means, but it sure sounds a lot more sophisticated than just saying fillings. Okay, if they want to question what the composite is, then I can say that's the material that we use for these fillings. But it's not my role in this office to be doing that. What is your role, Dr. Rubenstein? Well, it's for things like root canals, things that you really don't want me for. Okay, you're better off without me, believe me. Okay, so that's how I say those sort of things. That's all I have to say to you guys this morning.
Excellent,
Yeah,
excellent.
great. It's good
Well, in
recap,
that
too.
same kind of vein, like making sure that the patients are hearing the same consistent clinical message is, you have to be aligned philosophically. And so I'll plug the book again. I put it all in there so that they can read through the book and see how we're going to do treatment, but then how we're going to diagnose. And you can't, of course, cover everything, but at least have some calibration of how it should be. Because you can't have patients doing. We've been having same thing about referring kids out for ortho, because they come in and little Johnny gets seen by Dr. A and says, "No, you don't need braces." And then they come back 6 months later and they see another one, and Johnny's mom is told he needs to go to ortho right away. Well, mom's like, well, which is it? So having it the same, it has to be the exact robotic almost between all the doctors.
True. It's really hard to pull that off, though. That's the downside of having an associates in the office. There's going to be that occasional conflict.
Yeah.
All right, Wes, anything else?
No, any other questions? Anybody else got any other questions that,
One question to Greg. One question. Should I keep buying municipal bonds going back 55 years?
Well, they're starting to,
Going up.
things are starting up again with inflation. But I tell you, the way they're managing money, I would be more comfortable with somebody who prints money like the government, Be careful.
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
All right.
I have a
everybody.
quick question.
Oh, yep.
With the associates, do you ever have any associates that want to send out to a specialist work that you yourself can do?
Oh,
Yeah.
And if so, how do you handle that?
Right. So like root canals, right? Sometimes you want to do them, sometimes you don't. And so thankfully, all of us pretty much are in the same agreement of what we want to do and what we don't want to do. So I don't know, as far as shifting, like within the office, Dr. A sees the patient, doesn't want to do the root canal, but Dr. B within the office likes doing root canals. I guess we've never had that, but it seems like, you'd want to just try to keep it in-house. But thankfully, we all kind of have the same amount of what we want and not want to do.
Fortunate.
I've run into that problem where the associate's referring out work that associate B would do, we just have to put a stop to it with the team and just full stop. Nothing gets referred out like this type of thing until the doctors decided they don't want to do that. So it does happen.
Good. Thank you for all participating and listening. Lori, when will we meet again?
We meet the
Saturday.
second Saturday of every month. So we will, what does that fall on? In August, that falls on August 11th, or August 12th.
I'll look forward to it. Think up your questions, everybody.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. All right, bye-bye.